It's a war that shocked the world, a conflict that changed the global landscape, the war in Ukraine. In a sudden and tumultuous onset, the world bore witness to the outbreak of war, a conflict that would redraw borders and shift alliances. As the first echoes of artillery fire reverberated across the tranquil landscapes of Ukraine, the world held its breath in collective disbelief. The global community was rocked by this unforeseen aggression. Countries near and far voiced their concerns as they watched the initial stages of the conflict unfold. A wave of shock washed over the world, followed by an urgent call for peace. Yet amidst the clamor of international diplomacy, the war drums continued to beat. The immediate effects on Ukraine and its people were profound and far-reaching. Lives were uprooted, families torn apart, and communities shattered. The once peaceful streets of Ukraine were transformed into battlegrounds, the air filled with the ominous hum of impending conflict. The people of Ukraine found themselves in the eye of a storm, their future hanging in the balance. This was not just an attack on a nation's sovereignty, it was an assault on its spirit. But in these dark times, the resilience of the Ukrainian people shone through. Amidst the rubble and ruin, they stood united, their resolve unbroken. This was the beginning of a conflict that would test the mettle of a nation and alter the course of history. The world watched, its gaze fixed on this small, resilient country on the edge of Europe as it faced its darkest hour. The world watched in disbelief as Ukraine was thrust into a conflict that would reshape its future. The world was not silent. Nations rose to respond, each in their own way. As the first shots were fired, the United States, under the leadership of President Joe Biden, stood firm. Condemning Putin's aggression as unprovoked and premeditated, Biden emphasized the strength of the American people and their unwavering commitment to democracy. The nation took decisive actions to hold Russia accountable, targeting Russian oligarchs and reassuring Americans about the impact of the war on gas prices. Across the ocean, Israel navigated a delicate balance. Historically neutral in this conflict, Prime Ministers Benjamin Netanyahu and his successor Naftali Bennett fostered a close relationship with Putin. Yet, as the war progressed, Israel found itself in an intricate dance, providing humanitarian aid to Ukraine, offering intelligence and technical support, but refraining from supplying weapons. As Netanyahu considered a return to office, the scales seemed to tip towards a shift in policy, an inclination towards supporting Ukraine. Meanwhile, China, a global powerhouse, watched the conflict unfold with growing concern. The threat of the conflict spiraling out of control loomed large, casting a long shadow over their diplomatic discussions. The Chinese foreign minister's words echoed in the halls of power, a warning against involvement in the Ukraine war to avoid unpredictable consequences. The world watched and waited, each nation responding in its own way, some with condemnation, some with support, and others with caution. The global stage was set, the players in place, each with their own stakes in this conflict. As months turned into a year, the war in Ukraine evolved. The timeline of this conflict is punctuated with key events that serve to shift the balance of power and redefine the roles of various nations on the global stage. In the early stages, the conflict saw an aggressive invasion by Russia, met with fierce resistance by the Ukrainian forces. However, as time went on, the situation began to shift. The Ukrainian forces, with aid from international allies, began to hold their ground and push back, demonstrating an unyielding resolve to protect their homeland. Parallel to the battlefields, the diplomatic landscape was also shifting. Israel, once strictly neutral, began to consider a shift in policy towards supporting Ukraine, influenced by the changing dynamics in the Middle East and a desire to improve relations with the United States. Meanwhile, China expressed concerns about the conflict spiraling out of control, hinting at the global implications of this localized war. As the war progressed, the international community's stance towards the conflict hardened. The United States, under President Biden, took decisive actions to hold Russia accountable, targeting Russian oligarchs and strengthening the united response of the West. This was a clear message to the world that such unprovoked aggression would not be tolerated. The war also served as a testing ground for new strategies and technologies. The Ukrainian forces, drawing on international support, utilized intelligence and technical support to counter the threats posed by their adversaries. But despite these shifts in power and policy, the cost of the war was high. Cities were ravaged, lives were lost, and the people of Ukraine were thrust into a state of uncertainty and fear. The war also had a ripple effect on the global economy, impacting gas prices and causing economic hardships around the world. The war in Ukraine was not just a conflict between two nations, it was a global issue, a test of the world's resolve to uphold democracy and human rights, and a reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked aggression. A year into the war, the landscape of Ukraine was irrevocably changed. But amidst the devastation, the spirit of the Ukrainian people remained unbroken, their resolve to protect their homeland undiminished. Behind the headlines and the political maneuverings, the real cost of war emerged. The toll on humanity became evident as the invasion of Ukraine triggered a humanitarian crisis of a scale that resonated globally. In the early months of the conflict, millions of people were displaced from their homes, forced to flee the violence and seek refuge elsewhere. Families were torn apart, their lives uprooted, and their homes reduced to rubble. This mass displacement of people was not just a number, it was a multitude of individual human stories, each one a testament to the devastating impact of war. As the battle lines moved, the loss of life grew. Every day, the casualty count rose, soldiers and civilians alike caught in the crossfire. The human cost of the conflict was staggering. Each life lost a tragic reminder of the true price of war. The war also took a heavy toll on Ukraine's economy. Infrastructure was destroyed, businesses were closed down, and the once thriving agricultural sector was brought to its knees. The financial impact rippled out from the war-torn areas, affecting every corner of the country and plunging millions into poverty. Yet, amidst this grim reality, there were also stories of courage and resilience. Ordinary people became heroes, stepping up to support their fellow citizens in need. They provided food, shelter, and comfort to those displaced by the war, showing a spirit of unity and determination that was truly inspiring. The international community also rallied, providing aid and support to help alleviate the suffering, but the need was great, and the task immense. The crisis highlighted the urgent need for a peaceful resolution to the conflict, a call that echoed around the world. In the face of war, the resilience of Ukraine's people shone through, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The war is far from over. The future of Ukraine hangs in the balance. As we ponder what the future holds for Ukraine, we can't help but reflect on the potential scenarios that could unfold. Will Ukraine emerge victorious, or will the conflict continue to escalate, further deepening the scars of war? The path to peace is fraught with uncertainty, yet efforts continue to be made. Ukraine is not standing alone, as nations across the world rally in support, offering humanitarian aid, intelligence, and technical support. Even as we speak, peace talks are underway, with leaders from around the globe advocating for a resolution that respects Ukraine's sovereignty. Yet the road to recovery will be long and arduous. The impact of this conflict extends beyond Ukraine's borders and will likely reverberate throughout the world for years to come. The economic consequences are already being felt, from fluctuating gas prices to the potential for increased inflation. The geopolitical landscape has been irrevocably altered, with alliances tested and new tensions arising. And what of the Ukrainian people, who have shown remarkable resilience amidst unimaginable hardship? They've proven their strength and determination, standing strong against the tide of war. Their spirit, their courage, and their unwavering commitment to democracy offer a glimmer of hope in these dark times. The war has also served as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the importance of international cooperation. As nations navigate the complex dynamics of this conflict, the need for dialogue, diplomacy, and mutual respect has never been more apparent. Yet, amid all this uncertainty, one thing remains clear. Ukraine's story is far from over. Its people continue to write their history, refusing to be silenced or subdued. While the future may be uncertain, their resolve is unshakable. As we look to the future, one thing is clear. The war in Ukraine will leave a lasting impact on the world. It's a sobering reminder of the cost of conflict and the enduring spirit of those who fight for their freedom. As we watch this story unfold, we stand in solidarity with Ukraine, hopeful for a peaceful resolution and a brighter tomorrow.